For the second straight year now, the Phoenix Suns have been flat out embarrassed in an elimination game, losing 125-100 to the Denver Nuggets in Game 6, eliminating them almost exactly a year after their 123-90 loss to Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks, also in the Western Conference semifinals, in which they were down as much as 42 points in their loss last season. Last year, the team had a very impressive record of 64-18, which was the best in the league, but in the playoffs, their flaws were clearly shown. They went into the 22-23 season with around the same group of guys, and it seemed clear that it wasn't working as well as it had the past 2 years. They were 25-25 through 50 games, and even though from that point they began to play better, many thought they were now below the elite teams in the West. Change was needed, and the front office definitely made that happen, acquiring Kevin Durant in a monster deal with the Brooklyn Nets on February 9th, sending away Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, and 4 first-round picks to team KD up with CP3, Booker, and Ayton. This trade immediately propelled Phoenix to being many people's NBA title favorite. They were the betting favorite to come out of the West going into the playoffs, and while KD only played 8 regular season games for them post-trade, they were 8-0 in those games. This was the Suns' time. But now fast forward to today, and they once again have been completely thrashed in an elimination game, losing a fate-sealing Game 6 versus Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. Now going into this offseason, they have many questions about the pieces surrounding their 2 stars, and today we're going to be talking about it. Similar to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who we talked about a few weeks ago, the Suns went all in on a star trade, and after falling short in the playoffs, have questions on how to improve their squad with limited assets. The Suns' situation is looking a bit different though. Looking at the outlook of this team, I don't think there's any player that I'd be confident in being on the team next season besides Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Chris Paul continues to age and wear down at the end of seasons, and his play has dipped as well. Paul will be in the 3rd year of a 4-year, $120 million contract, and while his leadership and command over the offense is important, I don't think 14-9 with constant injury concerns is worth that type of money. He averaged 12-7 on a pretty poor 47% true shooting in the playoffs, and once again struggled to stay healthy for an entire playoff run. Even if you think they should move on for Paul, who really would be that enthused to bring him in at this point? He's 38 and making $30 million a year. Even though his contract moving forward isn't fully guaranteed for the next 2 years, that still isn't a great contract and one I'd want to take on my hands in most situations. I think the Suns, regardless of if they trade Paul, will look to try and get a guard who could create their own shot more and play at a faster tempo than the 38-year-old Paul, as in the games he was out before them getting eliminated in Game 6, in Games 3 and 4 with campaign, they played at a faster tempo and their offense was moving really nicely with Booker and Durant. Some names thrown out there have been guys like Terry Rozier or Fred VanVleet, guys like that who could score and can kind of be a combo guard, can handle the ball, but don't need the ball in their hands and can space the floor for Phoenix. They also could go after a younger guy who also fits that combo guard type of mold, like a Kevin Porter Jr. or Bones Highland. Regardless though, it's clear this team needs to add another guard, even if they keep Chris Paul. The other key player that the Suns have under contract for the foreseeable future is Deandre Ayton. And similarly to Paul, he also could be on the move. Ayton signed a 4-year, $132 million offer sheet with the Indiana Pacers last offseason, with it seeming he was eager to leave Phoenix, but the Suns matched, and he's a talented player, and it was clear they missed him in Game 6 with Jock Landale on Jokic, but he still leaves a lot to be desired. After a solid first-round series versus the Clippers, in a much more difficult matchup versus Denver in round 2, he averaged just under 11 points and 8 boards, which is 7 less points and 2 less boards than he averaged in the regular season, and Jokic had a field day versus him, averaging 35, 14, and 10 on 64% true shooting, while also clocking a 50-point double-double in that stretch of games where Ayton was available. Ayton also has shown very little willingness to dunk the ball as a 7-foot-tall center, which is a bit odd, but nonetheless I think he will be a very important piece to the Phoenix Suns this offseason. With them sending 4 first-rounders and 3 role players to the Nets, this team now lacks picks to trade and depth pieces to deal, and that's where Ayton comes in. He's the only one real value piece Phoenix has left to trade, and it will be very interesting to see, as they are expected to shop him, what type of interest he attracts. As for the rest of the squad, the Suns are going to have a lot of roster spots to fill this summer. Landry Shamet and Cam Payne are under contract for next year as well, and that's it for the guys that they have on locks for next season. With it being reported that Chris Paul and Ayton very well may not be on the team next year, this team could look a lot different. And for good reason. The team's lack of a supporting cast really was shown in the playoffs. In their Game 2 loss to Denver, they had 4 total bench points. They really didn't have any guy who's coming off the bench for them that was consistently contributing. A guy like Cam Payne or Terrence Ross, who they probably should have been playing more, might give you a scoring burst every few games, but they didn't have any guy who consistently was giving them a boost outside of their starting 5. Torrey Craig is someone who started the majority of the season for Phoenix and had a good first round for them, but Monty Williams oddly completely went away from him in their second round series versus Denver. I'd still want to bring him back and maybe Ross Okogie and Jock Landale this offseason if I was Phoenix. Let's say they do bring those guys back though, they still need more defense on the wing, a good defensive big who can protect the rim, especially if Ayton leaves, and a younger guard who can score. And while the Suns have a lot of roster construction to do this offseason, another thing we can't overlook from this series versus Denver is that Kevin Durant has to be better. Booker also really struggled for a 3rd straight elimination game in his career, having just 12 points in their Game 6 loss to Denver, but up to that point he had been having a legendary playoff run, averaging just under 34 points, 4.8 rebounds, and 7 assists on 68% true shooting in the playoffs this year. Durant's numbers in this series weren't bad, as he did average 29 a game, but for a player of his caliber, if you watch the games, you really would expect him to do more and really be able to take over games more. Aaron Gordon and the Nuggets did a good job keeping him in check, and while he was not bad, you expect a player like him to be able to dominate much more, as he put up just 45, 22, 88 splits in this series, and especially for a player who's as efficient as him, that's pretty poor. And while you also have to take into account Paul and Ayton's injuries and the lack of quality role players surrounding him, you just expect an all-time great level player like him to do a bit more for his team. There are also questions about Monty Williams, who has witnessed his team now be embarrassed in 2 straight postseasons. Do they consider moving on from all 3 of him, Paul, and Ayton, who are all instrumental in their finals appearance in 2021? Overall, the Phoenix Suns are going to do a lot of retooling this offseason, and I truly do believe they will be one of the most interesting teams in the league this offseason. They have a duo that some may call even the best in the NBA, but how they surround their 2 megastars is what will define this era of Suns basketball. Comment below your thoughts on the Suns situation, and I thank y'all for watching as always. Peace out.